So I wanted to help bust some myths around inclusion it made me think of this because of some work that my son just recently brought home. And some of the myths that are around inclusion for kids with significant disabilities are like, how could you possibly make it meaningful to them? They'll be bored because they're so low academically. And then how are they ever going to get their life skills? And what the research actually says is that they do. Their academics are stronger as a result of being included. Their adaptive behavior, social and communication skills, all those life skills are stronger because they're practicing them in environments where they have to use them, and it pushes their skills far further than in a setting that's sort of artificial and self-contained. And that has absolutely been our experience. But sometimes it's hard to describe. So I wanted to show my thoughts around this with the work that he just brought home in his backpack. So as an example of what he would have brought home from his self-contained classroom, color one, color and match, coloring sheets about one. I mean, we got this stuff all the time because that is what he is working on. He struggles to identify numbers past 10. He doesn't really understand the concept of addition and subtraction real well. And so those are the things that he continues to work on in a fully included 8th grade classroom. And so he is fully included in 8th grade in all of his classes. He goes unsupported. His math and English are co-taught. And then his science and social studies, he goes to all his classes independently, of course, but in those classes, they consult with the special education staff. They give him the units ahead of time so that they create modified assignments for stuff that he can't fully access. In his co-taught classes, they do the same thing, which is really easy for him. So obviously they're working on a little bit of a geometry unit this time. And so for him, you can see he was identifying the reflections. I'm sure other kids were doing a little bit more with reflections, but he was able to do that. So that's why I think he's got an A or a B in this class, but he was able to identify the reflection. That wasn't it, so he crossed it out. That was, so he put a check mark. So he was able to really clearly say what was a reflection and what wasn't. And putting the reflecting point, that was something that he did. And then the teacher wanted him to label it. That is not his writing, so I imagine that the teacher just said, you need to remember to label it or something like that. But he was able to do the reflection points. Those are definitely his dots, I can tell. And I'm not sure what this was, but he had to put yes and no. That was good. Decide yes or no. And then this is some of he's been working on learning to use a ruler. He also, to access more things, learned to use a calculator for addition and subtraction and multiplication and division and doing integers and things like that. So he has been doing that really well. His knowledge of number sense has gotten really good. And you can see that reflecting in this assignment, which was where he had to self-grade a rubric for himself as part of his social studies class. And he used his calculator to add it. Not accurately, but he did. So the comparison really kind of holds up to that idea that not to say that he's not still doing worksheets that are similar to this, where if he really can't access some of the stuff that's happening in math, if the kids are all working on independent work, he still does bring home addition and subtraction sheets. He is working really hard on use of his calculator for larger numbers, and then understanding the concept of addition and subtraction for smaller numbers. So he still does this stuff, but how much more academic, and that's what they say about inclusion, is like they're on task and engaged in far more academics than they would be in a self-contained setting, and that it does push their academics, but also their communication. That's been huge. His communication, his social skills, his adaptive behavior, those have grown so much more from being included. And this is from a self-contained teacher. I ran a self-contained classroom for a really long time, so I wouldn't have believed it until it was my own kid kind of putting it in my face that that is true. What the research says is true, that they make more progress, and it can be done. So